All right, I guess it's time, guys. Thank you to everyone being here today. Who's having a really good time at the conference? Raise the hands. Has anyone here learned anything new? Yeah? All right. I think we have a more intimate, audience here, so I'm going to open it back and forth with you guys, if that's okay with everyone. I have to stack against 4 other speakers who are like founders, CEOs, CMOs. I'm talking about something here today that is an ethical imperative, a moral landscape I think we're going to be talking about. I don't think anyone else at this conference is talking about this. So we'll go through it. So the title today is going to be Precision Healing, Informatics-Enabled Integrative Medicine for Personalized Care. Basically a mouthful for learning the new applications that are coming onto our world, the new digital innovations that are happening. And some of these applications have a space in our integrative medicine practices. We know this. So some of these practical implications are going to be our wearables, our clinical diagnostic tools, and all these have a large learning model or artificial intelligence within them, or even a virtual reality assisted therapy. So with that being said, I want to give everyone a chance here to have the ethical considerations, an ethical toolkit, really, to integrate those technologies into their space. We want to make sure that we discuss responsible, right, evidence-based and equitable adoption of these digital innovations while we still maintain the holistic side of our practices. So I hope you guys get something out of this today. We're going to go deep into these concepts. It's going to be nitty-gritty, so stay with me. I'll make it interactive, okay, don't worry. I know we're on the last conversation before the next one, so we'll get into it. So quick outline. We'll do a quick intro on me. We'll do some definitions, how some of these things work. Basically, some basic data collection, data analysis, and the visualization. We're going to use examples through a CGM. Anyone here use CGMs in their practice? Cool. Anyone using it just personally? All right, great. And we're going to use EEGs. I'm not even going to try to say that word, even though I use it every single day, okay? EEGs and PPGs. Anyone have experience with EEGs or in their practice? Great, awesome. And then lastly, a toolkit for evaluation and adoption. So I'm going to go into this space, but a quick introduction. I want to shout out to Dr. Rafat Fadul. That's our CMO at Synergenics. He's not here today. It is his son's birthday. We thought we had our conversation another day. There was a few flips arounds, but it happens. I actually want to thank Dr. Taylor Martin, who is the Chief Informatics Officer at Gillette Health and one of our Chief Informatics Officers at Synergenics. This conversation was actually made from him, and I was helping out. So those are actually my co-presenters. They're not here today, so it's just me. So give me some grace. But I am board certified in health and wellness. I'm a performance health coach at Synergenics. I help run the flagship at Beverly Hills. We have 30 locations worldwide. We were the ones that started the conversation around longevity health span. We wrote the textbook, and lots of our physicians and thousands of physicians afterwards have gone through our fellowship. So if you haven't heard Synergenics, well, we're coming back. We're taking on we're going to become the new gorilla in the room again. So with that being said, big data. Why does it matter now? Well, the first argument is going to be about adoption. Who here wears a wearable? Oura Ring, Apple Watch. You've got your phone. It's happening. As you can see here in this graph, most folks, 11% of folks actually are able to wanting to adopt it for just their vital signs. 16% for fitness and lifestyle. I mean, that's me. I'm always like, what are my reps and sets? What am I doing for training? What's my HRV? And then you have both. It even doubles even more, 53%, right? And then 20%, 1 in 5 people, they're not really about it. Okay, so adoption's a big thing. Well, what else? Well, remote patient monitoring. Who here does remote patient monitoring? Who here gets to see their patients continuously even though they're not in their practice day to day? Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. Well, as you can see in this graph, even with CGMs not coming up all the time, they're still going up. But in just the last few years, we know what happened around this time. This has scaled up. So we really want to make sure that we're staying on top of this. And from the remote patient monitoring use case, look at it in the publication. Since 2011, we've had a hockey stick effect in the publication, the validation, the studies, the adoption of all this. It's constantly getting tested. New technologies are emerging so much that I don't think there's enough data informatics officers to actually keep up with all this stuff. It's kind of a scary world, but also at the same time pretty exciting. That's how I would think about it. So from the publications today, I want to also keep all of you pretty updated on that new science and things like that. Okay, so let's go through a few definitions, and just to make sure that this helps you out, and it's going to be super helpful for everybody. Okay, real fast. Human plus the machine is better than just a human alone. Or I could say a clinician plus a co-pilot is better than just a clinician alone. And that's not to say that the clinician isn't great. They are. But wouldn't you say the patient would love to know that every arm of their healthcare and clinical team has a co-pilot working for them? Why? A double set of eyes, a double check, making sure that they're using the most current solutions to their problems. So you can look at the primary care physician. They have a co-pilot that can help them out. They have a medical assistant. You even have a behavioral health specialist, like a counselor, primarily like myself, where they're getting data, and they're getting a second chance to look at that data. It's a lot, and being able to look at that and give an informed, plan to their patient. I think that's what every patient would like. And in the integrative healthcare space, I think this is all what we're looking for. I don't think we want to churn out our patients and clients in 15 minutes and call it a day and move on to the next. I think we want to have some time. We want to be able to compress that time frame and be able to give the best that we can in that moment. So, clinician plus the machine, better than just a clinician alone or a human alone. Has anyone ever seen something like this? Raise of hands. Do you guys know where your data goes? There was recently, 2 weeks ago, from the HIPAA Journal, an article that came out that was talking about a leak of data, 82 million lives having their data breached. Isn't that crazy? Not wild? And this health data goes into multiple places. You've got your standards, your expanded, your stakeholders and capabilities. And you could think of this in research, in academia, your EHRs, your EMRs, in your diagnostics, even in the storage of it all, and then just with the wellness, fitness, and the internet. And that's more on the consumer side. So a quick example of this would be your CGM. Look at where it touches. Just imagine a person wearing a CGM on their arm or body. Do you think they know this? So with that being said, it touches everything, the consumer, to the biobanks, to the health technologies, the research institutes, and then obviously with the wellness and fitness world, you have your generation, the visualization, and all the integration in there. And then one of my favorites, this is a good one, the predictive models. How we nudge our patient base. All right, so how it works. So before going into this, what I'm going to use here are very nitty and gritty examples of how data is collected with the CGM and the EEG. Those are just two tools within this, a wearable and a diagnostic. This isn't necessarily the conversation, but I am going to go deep into these spaces. This can apply to any type of technology that you are going to bring onto your platform. Okay, and I'm just going to use the CGM and the EEG just to kind of show you how it works. So, for example, we'll use data collection with the CGM. So, for those that use this look pretty familiar. So basically, we have the traditional blood glucose monitoring, right, going into the vessel there. But with the Freestyle Libre, which is a flash glucose monitor, that's just in the ischium, the skin, right? From there, you have the analyte, the biomarker. You get the bioreceptor that goes into the transducer, the glucose and the enzyme going into a display with a proprietary algorithm to give us that. There are some pros and cons to this, right? With the traditional model, you are getting the blood glucose. With the skin, it's not truly that, but it helps us out with the algorithm there to give us our display. And with this data, you can start using it longitudinally with the patient, right? Weeks, days, months, and you can get lots of information. A little bit more information on them helps, and then you can actually cohort this against certain groups in your practice, and you can see what's going on with different group classes. Okay. Something a little bit more complex, something I work in day to day with the EEG basics is basically this right here. You have a cap. Then this cap has all these wires right into an amplifier or an EPU or CPU going into a computer. This computer then gives us out readout for raw recording on EEG data, and then it's cleaned and averaged. So this is a more complex diagnostic tool than the CGM, right? Trying to look at that brain, we're trying to actualize it. So a quick understanding of the EEG, we use a helmet. We put these nodes on the patient's head. We have a saline solution so we can get some voltages and amplitudes, and we place it from the frontal pole to the temporal to the occipital lobe and all throughout the head. From there, we get what we call principles of event-related potentials. Anyone know what those are? That's a stimulus to basically the reaction. So we get that through the axon, the dendrite cells. We'll get a simulated region of the cortex. Anyway, by the way, apologies. What I was trying to say is this is a quick, very general overview of what's going on in the brain. We're not going to go over the brain crazily right now, but just what we're getting is this dipole, which is two equivalent polar opposite charges, and then from there you're getting a magnetic field that comes out of that brain. All to say, we're looking for specific waves, and these are going to be our, one second here, delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, and mu. Anyone familiar with those? Good, cool, perfect. Just a reminder, alpha, more of that relaxed state, beta, kind of that stress and focus state, which is what I'm in right now, trying to focus, okay? All right, so we'll go into that. So we've got some data collection with the CGM, and then some data collection with the EEG, and then we're going to go into that remote monitoring that we've talked about. So some of you know this right here, but we have our forms of physical storage, which is what we call asynchronous data. So you're going to have the patient, they have their phone, then they show that phone to their doctor. They can look at that, review that data. That's like a Holter monitor. Then you have your dashboard storage, which is more synchronous. So you have your person, data goes through a cloud, then goes to a third-party vendor. That's like your Zia patch. And then your EHR storage, synchronous, asynchronous, which is my favorite, obviously. You're going to get your data onto the phone, the cloud, and then it can work on an EMR, EHR, like an Epic. Then the doctor can look at that. They don't have to go to other vendor sites. They're just on one specific, right? It helps have a dashboard that's helpful for your doctor or physician, and that's where the CGM comes in, right? That example of the CGM. It could all be in there. They can infer from all that. All right, so real quick, let's go into data analysis of the CGM. And again, we're not going deep into the CGM. I'm just showcasing what analysis could look like for back-end portals of certain vendors and certain technologies. So with this one, you're looking at CGM. So from there, you see some glucose statistics and targets. Gives us ranges from 70 to 180 all the way to that 250. Then you get your average glucose, glucose management, and then you can even get your time and ranges. I use this consistently with our patient base, and you're looking at low to high, how much time they are in their target ranges, keeping that dashboard very easy to use, right? Seamless, integrative, elegant. And then if you want to go deeper, and this is the behavior change patterns that we're really looking for, is you're looking at the glucose patterns over the 14 days. As you can see here, midnight to midnight, the through line there with the green, some hyperglycemic event, and then tons of lows in the hypoglycemic. And then from there, you can even go deeper into the 14 days and go on a single day. For those using CGM, have you all seen some crazy spikes in there before? What's the highest anyone's seen? I'm going to make this interactive. Anyone seen like that? Just throw it out.
Personal or someone else?
Either or.
165.
Okay. Anybody else? What was that? 140. 140? Okay. Cool. Got it. Okay. Well, that's why I think the data analysis, the CGM, is important for that behavior adjustment change, right? When you have data that you can use right away and you can make adjustments. And as a performance health coach, when I'm working on behavior change, we get to look at that. So you can look at them journaling their food intake, and as you can see, that bagel spiked them up a little bit, then it came down like an hour and a half later, and then they had their chicken, kind of stayed low, hypoglycemic event, and everything stayed low there. what's great about this, I think, is it gives you, the clinical team, and the patient something to gamify and work on and change right away instead of having to wait so long. And that's what's great about big data and being able to have data integrated asynchronously. I mean, personally for me, one of my favorite case studies is right there about 2 p.m. I had a patient who loved their matcha. And then they'd have their matcha and then be up for like 3 hours. I'm like, what's going on? And that helped me investigate a little bit more, ask some leading questions. Hey, what's going on with that matcha? Oh, you're putting in a lot of sugar in there, or fruit, or they had something else, or honey. Oh, you're doing it with a certain milk that was just a lot. I think it was an oat milk. So with that being said, they were staying for hours, and they're like, I don't know why I'm tired, why I'm lethargic. I'm having such a different mindset throughout the day after this. That right there, we were able to shift and adjust right away instead of having to wait weeks for them to see me or see their doc. We were able to do that in real time. And I think that's the importance of having your data usage and then having a clinical team as a co-pilot to help you out, make that behavior change right away. And I was able to help that person out. Their matcha's a little bit more boring now, but it's all good. Still feeling sharp around 2 p.m. Okay, let's go into data analysis of our EEG. So we're going to take that raw data that we see there, and we're going to get a printout or an algorithmic version of it through software. I'm being agnostic on this. There are tons of EEG companies coming out now in this space that's becoming not a wearable, but a clinical diagnostic tool. We use an FDA one, but I'm staying agnostic just because they're coming out with a lot of research right now, and they have their own seminar coming out, so I don't want to interfere with anything there. So with that being said, EEG, though, we're looking at what we call epochs, basically time frames in milliseconds and amplitudes and voltages of a certain electrode site. And from there, when we get this data and it's visualized, we're looking at what we call waveforms. So a P300 event, which is a stimulus and a response. So everything there from the P100, 200 to 300, N100, all the way to the P600. We're just looking for a P300 event-related potential. And when we visualize it, this is the cool stuff. This is the stuff I nerd out about, the P300 with the topograph, which is the map of the brain. And this is an audio signal. So going through this, from an auditory stimulus, you can still do a stimulus response through visual. But what we like to test an auditory stimulus. So imagine patient has to listen to a certain tone, and then they hear another tone, and they have to respond to that specific tone. So right there at the bottom, where the arrow is pointing at the bottom amplitude, is you can see that their brain is blue. Not much going on there in the prefrontal cortex, anywhere in the front. And then they hear the stimulus, and then that amplitude comes up. The brain has responded, and now you see the prefrontal cortex has gone red, and that higher that voltage showcases that area is being affected and working and responding to that stimulus. But as you can tell, this person has their eyes closed. Can anyone tell me why? The occipital lobe's blue, so their eyes are closed because the nose is in the front, ears on the side, occipital lobe, their eyes are closed. So we know that their eyes closed, and that's giving us this specific topograph. So we can give them a certain P300 or certain stimulus, and we're looking at that brain and do that. Now, you might be wondering, why is this guy talking about this? Well, one of the reasons we want to visualize some of this data, P300, with the brain is it's going to help us out with inferring some data. Like I said, a lot of brain health data is still coming out and being researched. I have a little joke on this. I think we'll figure out the oceans before we figure out the brain and the gut. That's just my cheeky joke. That's just what I think. But if we can infer more data and get more cohorts and more groups, this is a simple way of finding out P300 response tests with a group of folks. If you look at figure 1, we're looking at an age group of 10 to 20, age group of 21 to 40 in figure 2, and then figure 3 is going to be 41 to 60, and then the 61 to 80. Those are the averages of those age groups in that specific P300. So in your practice, you can start inferring a little bit, oh, where's my patient's P300 lie when they do my test? I put it against the average. And while they're on my program or any specific protocols, we can help them move out of cognitive decline. Anyone here know Dr. Bredesen? All right, coming out with a new book, Ageless Brain. Talks about this a lot. This is a non-invasive way to look at this visualization. There's obviously more he talks about, but this is just one of the ways we do it in our clinic at Synergenics, and we do it with all our clinics, to quantify that brain performance, right? And it is an FDA-cleared platform as well. So that's what I like about it. I think that's what I'm very excited about, because you could see someone coming in, I don't know, 75 years old, having a brain age technically lower than theirs, or that works with the age group that's lower than theirs, not a brain age, sorry, misrepresented that, an age group that works lower than theirs. So you can see that in their program, the protocols that they're doing, their hormones, their labs, even their exercise and nutrition protocols. What's the risk stratification there? And that's what we're working on a lot. Okay, that was a mouthful. All right, real quick. Before I go into this toolkit for evaluation, ethical toolkit, who here has an innovation committee? You got one? Cool, great. Everyone probably should, just because we're all in that forward space. But who here has an ethics committee? An ethics board? Oh, cool. Cool, all right, great. I'm speaking to the right room. All right, well, I want to basically go into this part of the conversation, going deeper into the ethics component of everything here today. As you can see, like, we've talked about big data, talked about just some validation tools, some visualization tools, and different vendors. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a CGM, it could be EEG, it could be something new that you're already working with. Algorithms work around us all the time. Most people think that because artificial intelligence and large learning models just came public in 2022, that's not been happening. Your life's been nudged in one way or another by an algorithm. You being on social media is part of an algorithm, right? So what I want to talk about today is a toolkit for evaluation. So for those that took the Hippocratic Oath, just a reminder, the pillar of beneficence, we are here to benefit our patients. The pillar of non-malfeasance, we are doing our best to not harm them in any way. And the pillar of autonomy, their data, their protocols they have onus of all of this. And then lastly, we have the pillar of justice. We are doing just care. So let's talk about elements of transparent data use. Kind of like that big slide I had before where data went. When it comes to healthcare data, these values right here should be asked. A patient should be asking this, but do they really? And I think we, as the stewards of healthcare data, as a clinical team, can do this for them and help them out. So a few of the questions that are going to be asked are, will I be asked for consent? Could my data be sold? Can I see incorrect data about me? Simple as changing an address. I mean, my family's worked in the healthcare system for a long time. Apparently getting some paperwork was impossible. And it was just making small changes. If you put the wrong address in, things weren't going to your address, and now you have to backlog like months. Ugh. Will my data be anonymous or anonymized? Some of these vendors that we may be working with do their own research and do their own studies for their own marketing use. Am I right? And then they put out something on social media. How do we know that they're going to use that with that data? I mean, I just saw recently, not to down talk any specific wearable, but they showed data on sex being a primary driver helping out people with sleep. And it was interesting because I have know-it-all with some folks in that company, and they're like, actually, those numbers were fudged just for marketing purposes. And even in the comments, people would ask, why would anyone want to need to know this? Sex helping me out with my sleep. I mean, for the biohackers and the biooptimizers of the world, they might, I don't know, want to make it a thing. Anyways, is my data secure? Like I said last month, there was a big research from the HIPAA Journal talking about 82 million folks and their lives being breached. And even the year before that, in 2024, I think it was closer to 100 million. And there was insurance policies, all these things. I think it was last year there was a insurance thing that happened where payouts were like 90 days behind because of an insurance hack. Value, who will be using my data, right? Is it just the clinical teams? Is it just me? Is it going to be other vendors? Is it going to be a board? Is it going to be marketing? What are the benefits and who will benefit, right? So we start thinking about that, and what will my data be used for? So I just want to implore you guys to look at that. I know it's like a lot of questions, but I think it's an ethical imperative for us to look at that. And I think with today, the moral landscape of the healthcare system can still be questionable. I think some folks are still dealing. I mean, I just heard a story recently that someone moved on from a different position because they didn't really agree with the ethics of a certain company, and that they didn't agree with that, and they moved on. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that's still happening to this day, to fudge the system for insurance payouts, and you just kind of have to question that. And where does the accountability happen? Where's the stand on that? And that's from a clinical team, not like from marketing or anything like that. All right, so adoption and analysis. Okay, bear with me. We're going to go deep into this one, all right? So we're going to go into a toolkit for this, and this is the toolkit that I want to leave everybody with. And just before I start, this is a pretty in-depth toolkit. So for those that don't have an ethics committee, an ethical board, don't worry. You can grab this resource and you can go through it. We're actually going through it right now, since just in the last few weeks alone, lots of artificial intelligence companies and different software groups are coming up to us, and we're making decisions based off of all these things. So let's go through this toolkit together. And it's going to be about these 6, and then when you are able to grab that resource, there's 5 files that you can look through, and you could just work on that together. It's pretty seamless. They teach you how to go through it, so it's not something that is unapproachable. So this was from Johns Hopkins, and Dr. Martin, who is our Chief Informatics Officer, used this a ton, especially in UCLA. And that's what he's doing. And here in Cenegenics, we're going to be using this more often since he's been on the team, and now that we're adopting more of these artificial intelligence models, these different programs, constantly just using this. So let's go through it real quick, and we're just going to have to stay on this page a little bit here. So toolkit, the impact could be one person, it can be a group, it can be a whole community, right? What is that scope? Is it low, medium, or high in those groups, in those places? And when we think about that, we want to make sure we ask the question, what is the overall impact risk? Does it go to the one person, group, the community? Is it low, high, medium, low? And I think that showcases an importance when you're working with a specific algorithm or a specific toolkit in the healthcare system. You want to make sure that you're using that responsibly. Okay, the next one is our appropriate data use risk, okay? So this is consistency and compatibility. Who here has had like a machine or software or anything like that which is never consistent? I see some eyes like, oh. And that happens all the time, especially with this new age. It's interesting. Newer models, you'd think they'd be even better, but some of the legacy systems are great. They're just so robust. And you're like, I can always rely on you. But the struggle with robust legacy systems is they may not necessarily be compatible with things that are happening today. I mean, just simple wearables today have to be constantly updated. I mean, technology moves so fast. Your phone is like already the next day, oh, we already got an update. So just think about these things from a wearable. So consistency and compatibility, meaning when I use this test, is it consistent? Does it actually use the testing that I need it for the data? Is it compatible? Or is it just a legacy system that's within its own framework? Does it even work in my clinical practice? Do I have to go in there and try to finagle this thing? All right, reputation and perception use. What is the reputation of this specific algorithm or specific software? How do my clients perceive this? How do my patients perceive this? What about my team and the perception of it? Is it really helping out at all? Or what is their belief in it? So these questions for impact, appropriate data use, they ask all of this, and you'll see in just a moment as well when we move forward. I think this is a good one right here. The accountability risk. Automation, accessibility, explainability, audibility, and down to accountability. So we're going to stick here for a second. I really think when you think about accountability, and as I made some examples around big data, some of these things aren't necessarily error of the system, it's sometimes an error of a lack of humans accessing it. So one example of this is automation, right? It's so easy to utilize automated systems nowadays, but who is actually giving it a second look? Who is the human behind that accesses that and is able to make sure that the automated protocols are helping us out? So an example of this is if you were to ask a machine the cardiovascular risk or stroke risk of a patient and it automated that and it gave you, it's a high risk, right? You'd want to ask, okay, how can you explain this to me? How did your algorithm tell me this, and why did you come with this? Or did it just do that on its own? And if we can't explain it, then that is a risk within itself, within the framework of that software, large learning model, artificial intelligence. So when you look at automation, you need to have accessibility because then you have to go in there and ask the questions on explainability and if you're able to audit that. So pretty, look, I'm not a chief informatics officer. That's not my day-to-day, but that's like the things that they have to deal with, especially in a healthcare platform when there's tons of people coming in through that system. If it's giving you information and you don't know why, you've really got to question the vendor, really question the thing that you've created and rebolt it up. All right, so yeah, accountability risk, accessibility, are you able to access that? Are you able to explain why we're giving these? Are we able to audit this? I mean, simple things like being able to audit something about a patient, their address, certain tests, are you able to get in there? And who's responsible for that auditability, right? We have these big clinical teams. Who's going in there and checking it? I know that physicians don't necessarily have the time to be doing this, so there has to be boards and committees on this, making sure that we're going back and forth and making sure our data is correct. And then accountability, again, holding that accountable. Is it you? Is it the third party? If something goes wrong, who takes on that risk primarily? All right, so next one we'll go into is our third-party methodology. So third-party methodology basically is that the CGM, the EEGs, just the explanations that I use, the examples, they have their own algorithms, right? So when you have these algorithms that are working in the back end, you have to make sure that you understand it, you accept those risks, and are understanding what the main drivers of that company is doing. So again, they're going to have their own desires as a company to move their products. They want to make more sales. Are they going to use the data of the person to make back-end marketing tools, things like this. Then we're going to go into historical bias and technical bias, and we'll kind of finish it off here. But historical bias, basically, the analogy I like to use is if you build a house on an unstable foundation, what do you get? A house that keeps getting built on an unstable foundation. And that historical bias perpetuates, and it keeps going. So if you have a model that you teach, you have to make sure that you teach on that. Is anyone here using ChatGPT or anything? Has anyone fed it like textbooks that they've read? Yeah, so I teach it like everything I've read, basically whatever notes I have here, right? And in that specific chat, for example, if you teach it a book, you teach it this, that's the bias it will perpetuate, basically. And then you can question it and prompt it. However, your questioning and prompting has to be really good. You kind of have to go into logic. It's like math with words, and just ask questions, massage it, and keep going. So that's historical bias. And that's just your own version of your artificial intelligence, just the free version. These companies have their own historical bias. So one other form of historical bias, like I use in our day-to-day with our clinics, like DEXA scans. Anyone here use DEXA scans? Dual X-ray imaging, we look at muscle mass, bone mineral density, fat mass, visceral fat. Well, if you look at DEXA scans and all the studies that they're basing it off of, I mean, for females, they're basing it off of a 30-year-old healthy female that you're going against. That's what the older models, right? Or a 30-year-old male, white female. And so if you have someone on there, and I still get shocked because when I look at ethnicity, I only have like 4 options. I'm like, I need a little bit more range. It perpetuates that, so you have to understand like the T-score and the Z-score. The T-score is against that 30-year-old, let's just say I'm using a patient that's like 72-year-old female, African-American, not like that. How does that go against her, or how does that even represent her? And then other data. So that's why we have to use the Z-score. Now, let's go into technical bias. Again, this is representativeness. How does this data, represent someone that was, if they were trained in like New York, if that data was trained in New York, how does that apply to somebody in California, South America, or even Asia? So that's what representative means. And then scope of training data. A great example of this is if the scope of that training was mostly done in a rural place, does that apply to an urban environment or vice versa? You can't apply it in the same space. And then lastly is methodology of risk. Little joke here, but if I want to make a hole on this wall, I could use a hammer with a nail, drill with the hole, or I could just punch it. The methodology risk is the choice that you use, so which one you want to use for that method. So as you can tell, here we had that reputation and perception. So basically for each 6 of these toolkits, each have their own subdivision, and it's a big ethical framework that you go through, right? And from there, we go through, let's go through this reputation and perception use. So for example, the appropriate use risk score with the consistency and compatibility, you just answer it. Yes, somewhat, unknown, no. And then you move on to reputation and perception, and you ask if it's supportive, mixed, or not supportive. So if we go through that, we're going from a low, medium, and then into high. Obviously, if we're in that high space, that's a risk that you have to manage. And then for third-party methodology, so going deeper into the third-party methodology, you don't have to take a photo of this now. I mean, you could get access into this, a free framework from Johns Hopkins. So one of the things that we do here, we go line by line on the design. So with that said, you have, we are the direct owners of the algorithm. If it was developed in-house rather than through a third party, you could say 1, you get yes. We or the creators involved in subject matter, experts in the design of the algorithm, yes. And then so on and so forth. So, and then lastly, the incorporation, we or the creators have piloted, tested the algorithm against a subset of real-world decisions before fully deploying it to influence all decisions. I kind of like to make a joke here. It's like the unknown unknowns. It's probability, cause. Has anyone here watched like Westworld? So there's a joke. There's a artificial intelligence in that show called Rehoboam. Basically, it actually affected real life decisions through algorithmic decision making. So think of just, and I have an artificial leader in the room right here, but artificial intelligence leader in the room right here. But I'm gonna take his words. But if you took a cohort of 1,000 people and gave them the same decision to make, those same people usually make the same amount of decisions, even though they're in different environments and different places, just based on the different outcomes that they come from. And sometimes that decision that they're made, that's affected for how they grew up, their environment, things like that. But it's interesting how if given the same option, what choices do we make? So yeah, in that show, it was kind of crazy. It's kind of hijacking hijacking artificial intelligence and like making people do things, not the opposite. Not being co-pilots is actually used for evil. All right, sci-fi aside. Step 4.2, so now we have to decide the third-party methodology risk level. If you got 6 to 8 points, it's a low risk. If it's 3 to 5, it's a medium risk, and then 0 and 2, obviously high risk. So those are components. So that's very much the technical bias of these things, right? All right, part 1 of the worksheet. Again, don't need to take photos of this. Each of these worksheets have their own downloadables. They explain how to go through it. Again, going through it, and if you have any specific questions, we can help you. But it's actually pretty self-explainable, and as you go through here, you're going through all of this. You're going through step 1, describing that impact, checking that off. Step 1.2, you're going to talk about the degree of the impact. It goes through everything. It's kind of a little tedious, I'll be honest with you. But I want you to take this and go, okay, this tedious step is super important. Why? The rate of artificial intelligence models out there that affect medical healthcare companies is so high. This is a framework to work off of. Look, it was exciting to see the new genomics things that are coming out, right? The new cancer screenings, all these things. Those things are going to be better tomorrow. They're going to be better next week. But if you don't have a framework specifically on how to handle these things, then you're just adopting things with no specific filter in mind. So this tool is what I am proposing to all of you to bring in. It is a blunt in that excitement. And for example, anyone know Brian Johnson? Okay, thank God. Good, I'm not speaking to a room that doesn't know him. But 2 to 3 weeks ago, I was at his Don't Die Summit in LA. He was just here last week, and then in Miami, and he'll be there in like 2 weeks. So he's on like a rager, all right? He's what we call like an early adopter and like a forward thinker in the space of just really getting after it. But I don't think he's really considered the ethical frameworks of doing all this. It's a double-edged sword with social media because he's bringing these things to light, and people are just jumping in, right? And doctors are allowing it, you know? They're getting paid. Okay, I'll do it. Myostatin stuff. I don't know if you watch his Netflix documentary, but he did like a bunch of things in there, and people are following suit. He has this Olympics of things where all their data is online on how they're aging and how they're aging backwards. So yeah, he's pushing it. Now, I'm not like that where like, oh, I'm going to just try out every single thing and just do it right now. I need a minute. I'm like, whoa, hold on. Let's ask a few questions first. Let's filter this out, and let's put a framework of making good decisions. But I'm also not the person that's just sitting by the sidelines like a wallflower and going, oh, wow, the bus just drove by. I didn't get part of the train. We are the integrative healthcare space. We are willing to try new things. I think we just have to have a framework around how we try those new things. So this is it right here. Again, this is part of like a 15-page worksheet, 5 different files, explains how it is. There's an example. And all through this, you have your very low to high scales, going through each of the questions, making sure that you're doing just fine. Cool. And that's where you can get it, ethicstoolkit.ai. So if you want to take a photo of that. These are the folks that made it with the Johns Hopkins University. These are the informatics officers. These are data folks, everyone that's working on algorithms right now, especially in the tech healthcare space. A few other tools I'd like to share. 2 books that really helped out with creating this presentation, if you're a nerd like me and want to read. Checklist Manifesto. Anyone know that one? Great book, great example of how checklists, especially in the medical field, are super needed, just making sure procedures are followed, and that leadership comes from bottom up as well, not just top down, and that people can check each other and have accountability through checklists to make sure that you're not, for example, doing a surgery, and you have a surgery and you're like, oh, I thought it was the other knee, not this one. Oh, okay, great. Ever since that book and those concepts of checklists came out, I think there was a big percentage of bad surgeries going down. And then Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari, which is kind of like informatics systems from the Stone Ages to data systems to today. And it's just a quick intro of understanding that. 2 great books basically breaking down checklists, and Nexus talking about information systems. They both bring in healthcare a lot because healthcare is at the forefront of a lot of data, right? Health data, biobanks, everything like this. And then I would like to share 2 other ones, if you don't mind. Who uses artificial intelligence day to day, like through ChatGPT or anything like that? We've got some folks doing it. Does anyone know about open evidence? Okay, so that's a great resource to get the best research out there, evidence-based, top stuff, through your prompts. I think it's a great tool. If you have an NPI number, it's free. And basically, you can prompt it with like a specific question, and it'll give you all the research that like you need for that specifically, and it'll give you the best stuff. So that's a really good one. It's really great. Another one that I like specifically, because one of my favorite evidence-based nutrition researchers, Lane Norton's on it, is consensus.ai. He sits on the board. He's one of the chiefs. I think he's a CSO. But he works on that as well. It's another great resource. What I love about all these artificial intelligence tools like Open Evidence, consensus.ai is I don't know if you're like me, but if you've had to Google create files, and then you'd have to like put those files away, and then you're like, where's that research article again? This is all in a framework that's right there. Type it in, and it's like it pulls it all up for you. It's all organized well, and you're like, boom, it's all there. Is that time? Oh, it is? Okay. All right, cool. Well, perfect. So, guys, I just want to again, showcase, if you want to take a photo of that, ethictoolkits.ai. And just to kind of bring it back to like what we're talking about. Look, the digital space, especially in health, we're not in a revolution. We've been in it for a while, okay? It's been going on. We're in this. And if you're not understanding these emerging technologies as well as you should be, please do so now. How it affects your practice, how it affects a telemedicine platform, how it affects you with your integrative medicine practice. We want to make sure that everything's you're doing it responsibly, it's evidence-based, and you're making sure you have equitable adoption of all these concepts. I implore you truly, I don't think anyone's talked about this all weekend, the ethical conversation. The moral landscape of healthcare is changing, and it's being pulled underneath our rug right now. Tons of people are coming into this space that are not healthcare people. They're technology folks. And there's folks coming from technology, cannot even be technology. They're having solutions from a different field, and they're inversing our problems and finding out different things. These entrepreneurs, all these folks, they may not even be coming from, I don't know, data. They might be even coming from advertising. They might even be coming from marketing. They might even be coming just from a different field. And with that being said, I think you having a filter between them and their specific toolkits, you will have a better chance at moving along. So I hope y'all enjoyed the speech. That's it. If you want to have any questions, there's my email there. And yeah, if anything I don't know specifically, we could put that up to Dr. Martin, Dr. Fadul. Other than that, thank you so much.